absent of being a human. And look, being a sniper is different than being a mass shooter. Mass shooting is much more personal and up close. Here, this shooter was about 200 yards away. It's almost like the God complex that I can take your life from here, but I don't have to be close enough to touch it or see you. So it's a very interesting paradigm in what we're facing right now in law enforcement.
And then, James, take us into the investigation right now as someone with a lot of experience within the FBI. What are they doing right now? What happens next?
Yeah, there have been a lot of criticisms. And look, I'll say this, to catch this guy in 33 hours. Now, initially there was speculation this was a trained professional assassin. And I think many of us that speak about this for a living and that have a law enforcement background and were former snipers in law enforcement or in the military knew that that wasn't the case. It was a very short-range shot. And just the manner in which the shooter tried to egress out of there. If he had jumped off that building, gotten into a car, and drove off onto I-15, he could have been hundreds of miles away before anybody could have tracked him down. But to be stumbling around the parking lot, stumbling around the contiguous neighborhoods, you knew that this was an amateur. Look, there's a lot of work to be done. The first part is, thankfully, thank God we have this person in custody. Jessica, now the hard work begins. Putting the case together. I'm certain that they're going to attach murder charges at the state level here, and then maybe the feds come in. Is it possible to attach a political assassination statute to this, or a terrorism statute, domestic terrorism? Absolutely possible, and I think we'll learn a lot in the next couple of days.
James Gagliano, thank you so much for being here with us. We appreciate it.
Charlie Kirk almost single-handedly brought a new generation to the conservative movement. And the aftermath of his stunning murder continues to unsettle the political world. Yet as authorities are still trying to understand what motivated the suspect accused of killing Kirk, the messages from political leaders have ranged from seeking calm to seeking revenge. For President Trump and his top officials, it's clear how they view this moment, a time to go after what Trump calls the radical left.
We are going to do what it takes to dismantle the organizations and the entities that are fomenting riots, that are doxing, that are trying to inspire terrorism, and that are committing acts of wanton violence. It has to stop. And my message is to all of the domestic terrorists in this country spreading this evil hate, you want us to live in fear? We will not live in fear, but you will live in exile. Because the power of law enforcement under President Trump's leadership will be used to find you, will be used to take away your money, take away your power, and if you've broken the law, to take away your freedom, Sean.
So is America entering a dangerous new chapter? To break this all down, we have CNN's Jeff Zeleny, NPR's Mary Louise Kelly, and the New York Times' Stead Herndon. Good morning to you all. Nice to see you all this Sunday morning. Different presidents deal with moments of crises in different ways. Oftentimes you hear an effort to try to calm things down on both sides, particularly when one side in particular is feeling a lot of pain. You had George W. Bush post 9/11 famously say, we're not at war with Islam, making clear that Islam is not a war, is a religion of peace, he said. Trump in this White House, based on what we heard from Stephen Miller there and what Trump said in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's killing, view this moment much differently.
I mean, as we know now, more than a decade on for President Trump's time in the White House, he does not view his role as a unifier. He does not view his role as a healer. He views his role as someone who motivates and energizes his own base. I mean, we don't need to hear Stephen Miller to know what President Trump is thinking, but that is very key because Stephen Miller now is one of the top advisors. And the difference between this term and the first term, some of those other voices like Ivanka Trump, for example, or Jared Kushner or others who kind of softened President Trump's edges occasionally, because there were a few moments in his first term when he would try to reach out or try to heal or comfort. That is gone. He does not see that as his role. In the very early moments of the horrific assassination of Charlie Kirk, President Trump made clear that he blamed it on the radical left. So even as I was struck Friday, he was being interviewed on Fox and Friends, the anchors there tried about 2 or 3 times to kind of lead him to water on, is this a moment of healing? And boy, he did not accept it or go there. This is who he is, us against them. So none of this should be surprising. I think the bigger question is, how do others respond? And Utah Governor Spencer Cox sort of stood alone this week as an example of a different voice.
I think it's interesting, too. We've all watched, in the absence of information, conspiracies and partisan accusations fly and fill the void. This week, for the first couple of days, we had a void in terms of identity. We didn't know who, we didn't have a suspect, we didn't have identity, and we didn't have motive. We now have someone in custody, we have a name, we have an age, we have information starting to come out. According to county officials, this 22-year-old was registered to vote, had not voted, grew up in a home with Republican parents, and yet we still don't have really any idea about motive as we continue to piece this together, but we have not watched President Trump back off his rhetoric or his aides backing off rhetoric about the radical left, which we don't know, but there is no evidence to support that right now.
Yeah.
There is radical left with fingerprints on this.
Yeah, look, he's 22-year-old Tyler Robinson. We'll learn what his motive is. We'll hopefully learn what his motive is. He's alleged to have committed this heinous crime, but Trump was very quick on Wednesday night in the aftermath of the murder to go out and give that Oval Office address and highlighted a number of episodes of political violence that occurred against Republicans in recent years, but this is sadly an epidemic that's happening to both political parties, this era of political violence. Just look on your screen the number of, since 2011, when Democratic Congresswoman Gabby Giffords was shot in Arizona, all the way, Steve Scalise, the Republican leader now, currently, 2017, he was shot in that baseball practice here in Washington. But look, just this year, there are several Democratic incidents affecting Democrats. Governor Josh Shapiro's home set on fire. There was Melissa Hortman, and her husband were tragically killed, a Democratic legislator in Minnesota. Trump didn't mention those Democratic episodes, but this is violence that is happening against officials from both parties, and this is the era that we're in right now.
Absolutely. I think I've heard some people say, this marks a new era of political violence. I mean, as that graphic shows, we are already in that era. As we see cycle after cycle, these are targeted instances, and these are ones where the political motive is super clear. I mean, I think that we've actually, I think there's kind of cavalier rhetoric right now about violence and civil war. You'll hear this kind of from the right and left. And I think because the idea of polarization is so deep and feels like endemic to American electorate, I think folks have kind of resigned themselves to say something like this is core to our politics. But I don't think that we should really flatten the degrees here. Like when we start talking about sectarian violence, political violence, and people resolving disputes kind of outside the marketplace of ideas, that messes everybody's life up. And I think that's kind of antithetical to the idea of American politics. And so this moment, I think, crystallizes the change in which we've seen over the last several years. And I think it really is one that American electorate has taken to heart. They recognize that our politics has changed, and it's part of the reason so many voters have become increasingly distant from it.
And if you look at that graphic there, 2011, when Gabby Giffords was shot, that was such a staggering moment. But look how many are in 2024 and 2025. The frequency with which these events are occurring on both sides is very notable here. And we are united in our own divisions. Algorithms and other things drive our thinking that way. So a lot has changed since 2011 in our society, but certainly on both sides of this. And it's just stunning.
Yeah, to inject one piece of reporting that our team at NPR has been doing this week, which was interesting, is, there's often this assumption that political violence in this country maps right alongside political divisions in this country, that if someone on the right has been attacked, you got to blame somebody on the left and vice versa. And in fact, it's not nearly that clean or neat. Again, so much we don't know about motive and what was happening this week with the shooting of Charlie Kirk. But if you look, one of my colleagues, Odette Youssef, has done really interesting reporting, and she said, look back at the attempted assassination of Donald Trump last year. Yeah. The first attempt. Last summer was quite the summer. But the one in Butler, Pennsylvania, where he was at an open-air rally. The individual involved in that had also been looking at events where Joe Biden was going to be out and might be vulnerable. So yes, there are political divisions. Yes, there's political violence. There is also, you know, a lot of data that suggests that some of this doesn't map quite that neatly, and maybe we're looking at people who also just want some high-profile incident of political violence to get attention.
I think in general that right-left dichotomy is becoming increasingly useless. I mean, it's becoming harder and harder for us to map, I think, folks onto this. And so I think it's important to bring up what happened last year with President Trump, because for several of these alleged shooters, you don't see a consistency of belief. If anything, you see a kind of brain poisoning from what I would call a growing generation of kind of internet, like folks who have really kind of molded their identity in the kind of irony poisoned Reddit subreddit. You know what I'm saying? That is much more,
and
I think,
have access to guns.
Yeah, yes, for sure. But I'm saying that is much more reflective of the political makeup than a strict right, center, left. And I think that's important to point out.
You had mentioned, Jeff, Spencer Cox, the Utah Republican governor. He's been prominent in the aftermath of this assassination against Charlie Kirk. His tone on how to handle the next phase of this has been much different than Donald Trump's. Listen.
The radicals on the right oftentimes are radical because they don't want to see crime. The radicals on the left are the problem, and they're vicious and they're horrible.
Your generation has an opportunity to build a culture that is very different than what we are suffering through right now. Not by pretending differences don't matter, but by embracing our differences and having those hard conversations. I think we need more moral clarity right now. There is one person responsible for what happened here, and that person is now in custody.
So much different. I mean, there's one person responsible here. That's not what Trump is saying.
Not at all. I mean, Governor Cox, this has long been central to who he is long before this. He believes that, yes, we can disagree, but should be done in a much friendly, neighborly way. But he is not a lone voice, but certainly a rare voice among leaders in this party.
Yeah, no question.
And he has not just talked the talk, but walked the walk. I'm remembering he's done events with, for example, his Democratic counterpart, Jared Polis, Wes Moore, right, you know, next door in Colorado, saying, look, there are ways we can work together.
Yeah.
I do want to start with some of the many unanswered questions about the investigation. You told the Wall Street Journal that it is, quote, very clear to us and to the investigators that this was a person who was deeply indoctrinated with leftist ideology. Can you elaborate on that and be more specific?
Well, sure. So that information comes from the people around him, from his family members and friends. That's how we got that information. Again, there's so much more that we're learning and so much more that we will learn. There will be official charges will be filed on Tuesday, and there will be much more evidence and information available then. And again, we're interviewing all kinds of people, everyone that knows him, and trying to learn more about what that motive actually was.
Well, some outlets are reporting that the suspect lived with a transgender partner. Is that accurate? And are investigators looking at this part of his life as a possible motivation?
Yes, definitely. And yes, I can confirm that. I know that has been reported, and that the FBI has confirmed that as well, that the roommate was a romantic partner, a male transitioning to female. I can say that he has been very cooperative. This partner has been incredibly cooperative, had no idea that this was happening, and is working with investigators right now.
And how is that relevant to the investigation when it comes to the motive? Are you learning that?
Sure. Well, yeah, that's what we're trying to figure out right now. Again, it's easy to draw conclusions from that, and so we've got the shell casings, other forensic evidence that is coming in, and trying to piece all of those things together.
You said that the roommate is being very helpful. Has that individual explained to law enforcement what the mindset of the shooter was and whether or not it is connected to his ideology or his situation as transitioning, as you just described.
I'm not sure about not sure about that piece right now, Dana.
Okay, so we're not sure if the fact that he was romantically involved, as you say, with his partner who was transitioning is relevant to the motive of the murder based on the investigation.
Well, sure. Again, all of these things we're trying to figure it out. I know everybody wants to know exactly why and point the finger, and I totally get that. I do too. And so I just want to be careful, as I haven't read all of the interview transcripts, and so we'll have to wait and see what comes out.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. We should all be careful. I guess just because that's out there are a lot of people drawing conclusions, and so I'm just trying to get as many facts as we can glean from you, since you have been involved in the investigation. And on that, the social and gaming platform Discord released a statement saying its servers were in no way involved in Tyler Robinson's alleged plot to assassinate Charlie Kirk. But it did say there were, quote, communications between the suspect's roommate and a friend after the shooting, where the roommate was recounting the contents of a note the suspect had left elsewhere. Can you tell us about that note that the shooter left?
So I can't yet. Again, those are things that are still being processed for accuracy and verification, and will be included in charging documents.
Okay, so but the note was found, or the content of the note is known by law enforcement?
Again, I can't share any specifics. They're looking at everything right now.
Understood. I just want to go back to my first question about what you told the Wall Street Journal about that this is a person indoctrinated with leftist ideology. And the reason why I think it would be great to be more specific is because your goal of trying to lower the temperature, you said that this is based on investigation and interviews with people who knew him. Did they just use the term leftist ideology, or did they give specifics?
Yeah, there are conversations that were discussed specifically about Charlie Kirk, other conversations about the direction that this was going. And look, my job is just to tell people I really don't have a dog in this fight. If this was MAGA and a radicalized MAGA person, I would be saying that as well. If the friends were saying that, I would be sharing that as well. That's not what they're sharing. And so I do think it is important, again, to understand how someone gets radicalized like this. And in this case, it happened as much as people wish it wasn't or don't want it to be this. These are the facts that are being presented to us. If there are additional facts that would point otherwise, but family discussions, parents, this is what they're saying, and these things happen. And so it's okay to have these discussions.
Listen, absolutely, and I'm just trying to get more facts, more details of the facts that you're putting out there. One last question on that. You just said right now, which is something that you mentioned on Friday, is that he had discussions with family members about Charlie Kirk. Do you have specifics on what he was saying about Charlie Kirk to his family?
Just not a fan. That's all I can say.
Okay, not a specific reason why. McKay Coppins from The Atlantic is reporting that President Trump called you after your remarks on Friday, and that the president told you, quote, you know, the type of person who would do something like that to Charlie Kirk would love to do it to us. What was your response to the president in that conversation?
Well, it was a long conversation, by the way. We talked about lots of things, but it was very sobering. And again, he's not wrong. I mean, he knows better than anyone, as someone who literally was injured by a bullet. I mean, a fraction of an inch away from being killed a year ago. He understands that better than anyone. I would also just note that he also mentioned multiple times that he was grateful for the press conference and the message that we shared. And so I'm grateful, you know, that he's talked about nonviolence. He's quoted Charlie Kirk on the nonviolence issue. I understand he's also very angry, and I get that. This is his close personal friend, and anger is a normal reaction.
So he was grateful for the press conference. Others in his orbit, Governor, were not. Steve Bannon talked about you calling to tone down the rhetoric, saying the following, saying Spencer Cox is a national embarrassment in a time where we need action. He tells us to sing Kumbaya and hold hands with Antifa. This is not a time for pontificating. This is a time to declare Antifa a domestic terrorist organization and have the FBI go kick down some doors. What's your response to Steve Bannon?
Well, again, Mr. Bannon is angry, and rightfully so. And I'm not saying we have to just sing Kumbaya and hold hands. What I'm saying is we actually should disagree. I think Charlie represented that better than anyone. Charlie said some very inflammatory things, and in some corners of the web, that's all people have heard. But he also said some other things about forgiveness. He said some amazing things about when things get dark, putting down our phones, reading scripture, going to church, talking to our neighbors. He said that we have to engage, and that's what I appreciate most about Charlie Kirk. Said if we don't keep talking, that's when the violence starts. Look, there are conflict entrepreneurs out there who benefit from radicalizing us, and I'm not one of those. I don't know that that's particularly helpful. But he is right at this: we need to find out how this happened, and we need to stop it from happening.
You called social media a cancer on our society. I know you have made talking about social media one of your key issues as governor of Utah. What should or even can government do to cure this cancer, as you call it?
Well, there's some things that we're working on for sure. We have to get phones out of the classroom. We're doing that in Utah. Many states are doing that right now. We have to hold the largest companies in the history of the world with combined $1 trillion market caps. We have to hold them responsible for the algorithms that are pushing us. Again, they're hijacking our agency. They're hijacking our free will with these dopamine hits. Same chemical reaction as fentanyl, getting us addicted to these platforms, and outrage releases a dopamine hit for sure. And they are taking no responsibility for this. In fact, they're suing the state of Utah to stop the most comprehensive social media reforms in the world's history. They're happening right here, and we absolutely have to hold them accountable.
Just real quick, you have said that we're in a dark chapter, and you're not sure if it's the end of a dark chapter or beginning of a darker one. Is your view of America right now shaken?
Yeah, I mean, if your view of America is not shaken right now, then there's something wrong with you. This is a direct assault on America. A direct assault on every single one of us. Of course, it's an assault on Charlie, and we love Erica and her kids and his family. But this is us, and this is our chance. This is our moment. We've had periods like this in the past. I mentioned the late '60s and early '70s. But if we're waiting for a president or a governor to get us out of this dark chapter, then it will never happen. We can't. I don't understand this. Again, giving our agency up, waking up every day and saying, well, what did the president say today? That's going to determine how I react. Or what does the governor say today? That makes no sense to me. Every one of us has to look in the mirror and decide, are we going to try to make it better, or are we going to make it worse? And I pray that God will help us find him again, and find our souls and find each other again.
Governor, thank you. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dana.
A picture is worth 1,000 words. I'm Michael Smerconish in the Philly Burbs. Here every week, I share editorial cartoons drawn exclusively for my daily newsletter. It's one of my favorite parts of the program. To make a point through a political cartoon is such a talent, to have insight and then be able to draw it. Well, for yesterday's newsletter, take a close look at what Scott Stantis drew. Stantis is an award-winning illustrator for the Chicago Tribune. From Uncle Sam's mouth, we see an assault rifle just having been fired. Note that it's smoldering at one end. The gun represents the violent political verbiage that passes for discourse these days. But take a closer look, because to me, at the other end of that gun, it looks like a microphone. It's brilliant. It's sad. It's true. It's the speech that is often pulling the trigger these days. We're a sick nation. We're afraid. We're fragmented. We're isolated. We're lonely. Connectivity, what they call connectivity, has actually disconnected us, and our kids are bearing the brunt. We don't have a sense of common purpose because we no longer have shared experience. And this is not some epiphany on my part after the unspeakable assassination of Charlie Kirk. Just a confirmation of so many interviews I've conducted right here over the past decade. This time, many of our leaders, left and right, they said appropriate things. Mike Johnson, John Thune, Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, all of them. Unfortunately, the Hill reports that some teachers, some firefighters, some public officials have been suspended or fired after celebrating Kirk's death online. The very idea that anybody would cheer an assassination, it underscores just how sick our discourse has become. And many of those whose livelihoods depend on creating conflict, they were quick to politicize with a ghoulish game of whataboutism. I'll not give them further notoriety by saying their names, but I want you to take a look at something and recognize this is an incomplete list. On one side, you've got the violence directed toward the Minnesota Democratic lawmaker and her husband murdered, Governor Josh Shapiro's home firebombed while his family slept, a conspiracy-fueled attack that left Paul Pelosi with a fractured skull, a shooter opening fire on the Centers for Disease Control, the plot to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and, of course, the January 6th storming of the U.S. Capitol. And now shift to the other side. Charlie Kirk assassinated. 2 separate attempts on Donald Trump's life, an armed man arrested outside Justice Kavanaugh's home, a gunman opening fire on Republican lawmakers at a baseball practice that nearly killed Steve Scalise, more than 20 pro-life organizations vandalized or firebombed after a leaked Roe v. Wade decision, and even 2 Republican candidates in Minnesota physically assaulted while campaigning. The point is that violence is coming from all angles, which is why I was disappointed when I heard the president say this.
How do we fix this country? How do we come back together?
I'll tell you something that's going to get me in trouble, but I couldn't care less. The radicals on the right oftentimes are radical because they don't want to see crime. The radicals on the left are the problem, and they're vicious, and they're horrible, and they're politically savvy.
No, Mr. President, the radicals on all sides are the problem. And the truth is that no side has a monopoly on political violence nor on mental health. So now what? Writing at the Wall Street Journal this week, Peggy Noonan said the following: the assassination of Charlie Kirk, it feels different as an event, like a hinge point, like something that is going to reverberate in new dark ways. It isn't just another dreadful thing. It carries the ominous sense that we're at the beginning of something bad. I fear that she's correct. I'm sure she wants to be wrong. Yesterday, Utah Governor Spencer Cox, he framed it as follows.
The question is, what kind of watershed? And that chapter remains to be written. Is this the end of a dark chapter in our history or the beginning of a darker chapter in our history?
Well, he's inspired